Welcome to Plank of the Week. This time, it's back to its original length. You asked for it, you got it. It's Plank of the Week, the long version. Welcome to Plank of the Week, and you'll be delighted to know that we're back to the full-length version. So, everything you've heard is all absolutely and utterly true, and I'm delighted to say that for the first time ever, I'm joined by Susan Hall, who's visiting us from the London Assembly. She's the leader of the Tory party there, and Andre Walker, who used to work at the London Assembly, but a long time before Susan was there. So, welcome.
Nowhere near as important.
In the time-honoured tradition, because you're here for the first time, you get to be the first nominee for the first Plank of the Week. So, I wonder who you're going to choose.
I wonder. Could it possibly be SADIQ Khan?
Could it possibly be the Mayor of London, who has been in now for how many years? 6 years? Or is
yes,
it 7?
it's 6 years. No, it's 6 years now.
He's managed to completely ruin London, hasn't he?
Well, he's certainly doing his level best by the look of it.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm nominating him is because he always blames somebody else for anything that's going wrong. And when we look at the, I mean, this is a humorous programme looking at these planks, but actually some of this stuff's really serious. The way he deals with crime is just appalling. He is the Crime Commissioner of London, and yet I believe that I've been away, and while I was away, he was blaming the cost of living, austerity, the heat waves, school holidays, and longer days for the reason behind the crime wave we've got at the moment.
Nothing to do with him not being able to get to grips with the Metropolitan Police.
Didn't he also...
Effectively in special measures, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yes, it is.
Didn't he also blame the government for his own fare rises? So he put up the fares and then claimed the government was responsible for it, which I found completely bizarre.
Well, everything he does is bizarre. He's not dealing with TfL very well either. I mean, to me, he's my Plank of the Week every single week. But, I mean, this last few weeks, he should actually come up and admit that crime in London is in is in a terrible state.
Well, it's out of control this week, isn't it?
Well,
I mean, it doesn't feel like it's just this week, but it's been almost building up to this place now where we feel like, you know, anything could happen when you walk out on the streets. You know, you don't know what you're going to see.
No, you don't.
I mean, you might see some car ram raiding into the side of a building, people ram raiding, rushing through. We had footage of these kids in Oxford Street a couple of Saturdays ago, just rushing into shops, stealing what they could get their hands on, and rushing out again. And nobody was stopping them.
No, that's right. And they're never called.
SADIQ Khan, I mean, in a sense, his policy is racist, because what he does is he refuses to allow stop and search, and the cost of that is that black young people have a serious knife crime problem and are dying in unprecedented numbers. But I will tell you something, if SADIQ Khan walks out of City Hall and shot somebody in the face, he'd blame the manufacturer of the gun. That is the level to which this man will just never take responsibility for anything.
He wouldn't walk out of City Hall anymore because they basically moved from City Hall.
That's right.
Susan and I have talked about this before. He's moved the entire government of London out of that lovely sort of round building.
Oh, yeah.
It now sits there looking like it's an abandoned
building.
Looking
like a testicle.
Yeah, looking like it's an abandoned building, and a very dirty one at that. Because they didn't clean the windows for years.
That's right.
And I was around there the other night, and it's just completely in
trouble.
It looks dreadful.
I've got a little story for you. I remember phoning up Lord Foster, who designed City Hall, and I said, Lord Foster to his PA, I said, I want Lord Foster to pay for an umbrella because it's raining. And he said, well, why is it my fault? I said, because I'm inside the building you designed.
Yes, that's right.
Was it leaking?
Well, they sent round some engineers. Yes. What they'd done was, because of the plankery around climate change, they'd built an air conditioning system that really didn't work. Right. And so it was just a bit of a nightmare.
Oh, right. Yeah. So the air conditioning system leaked.
Well, we'll put Lord Foster in as a bit of a retrospective plank.
I'm not sure he's ever been nominated, actually, but that'd be interesting.
Well, wouldn't it just?
So now you guys have to go somewhere out of the way.
Victoria Docks.
Victoria Docks.
It's a long way away.
Which is quite a long way away.
That's right.
Which really is his version of trying to discourage you from ever seeing him.
Well, we never see much of him anyway, and I don't think anybody does. And the only thing he talks about is air pollution, because it's about the only thing he seems to be achieving anything on. Everything else, transport for London.
But why does he seem so popular, though? Because, I mean, I don't know what the public in London are seeing. Now, some people have made comments about, you know, his ethnic background or whatever, but that doesn't account for it. There are literally a large number of people in London.
London is a Labour city, isn't it?
Yeah, but, I mean, he's terrible.
Yeah.
Right?
But I presume it's because he's the Labour candidate. I mean, the only place that Labour won a seat in the last election, let's not forget, was in London.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, so, I mean, people in London probably... by and large, in a majority, do not think about SADIQ Khan the way we do.
Well, I don't know. I think his popularity is beginning to wane.
Do you think?
Well, surely.
I mean, certainly what was true was Sean Bailey came a lot closer to unseating him.
He was a lot better than
thought.
everybody. You know, if we'd have had some confidence in Sean Bailey as the media class, I think he might have actually
won. Well, even if the Tory party itself had, because the Tory party themselves in government in Downing Street didn't really think he had a chance. So they didn't really do much for him, did they?
Well, we were going through all the pandemic at the time. Getting out campaigning was difficult. I mean, there was so much in that particular election.
But I remember somebody being down at the count, ringing me the morning that they've been doing the count, going, he's really close. I mean, in fact, I think at one point he was ahead of him.
Well, don't forget, Boris won twice.
Do you know, I remember when I worked at City Hall, I remember saying to the Conservatives, they selected Boris for a bit of a laugh. And I said, look, you've got to be careful here because you are picking the winner. I said, there's no way that Ken Livingstone's going to win this. And the reason is, and I think this is why Sean Bailey did so well, there are just tens of thousands of people in outer London who never get to be reported in the news, who get completely ignored by the Mayor of London, who will go out in places like Barnet and vote for the Conservative candidate.
Yeah, you're completely right there. It is the donuts, we call it, and the outer boroughs that are more likely to vote Conservative. But I do believe there's still a lot of Tory voters in inner London. We just need to excite them with our next candidate and
also,
and
I
get
think
them
he's
out.
going to upset more people now with all of the kind of the traffic changes that he's made, putting the congestion charge further out so it captures more people. You know, the possibility now of driving around in London, it's just ridiculous.
Well, he hates cars, doesn't he?
Yeah. I mean, I went to, it was rail strike day, it was tube strike day, and also he promised there would be no strikes.
That's right, zero strikes.
Lest we forget.
Yeah, I think there's been about 75 or something strikes ever since he said he wasn't going to have any. Or if you might have a better number.
I've actually got a 95.
There you go, 95 strikes.
So he's failed on that
So he's
miserably.
failed. And
he fails all over.
But it's the government's fault, isn't it? It's always someone else's fault.
It's always somebody else's fault.
That's it. That's what he says. Well, that's enough of him. And he's always very high up in because we keep a running tally of the Plank of the Year because we do the Plank of the Year show around Christmas time, and he's always in the top 10. Last 2 years, he's been in the top 10.
Inevitably.
All time, Plank.
Do you know what? If he wins, I'll take my microphone out and go and find him.
Do you know what? We've always said if he was to win it, we would go and deliver the prize to him. So you have one Plank of the Year, and here it is.
Well, in that case, every time I come on now, I'm going to nominate Steve Carnes and push him up the ranks.
To be fair, you've got to go a long way, though, to beat Harry and Meghan, because they're also in every week.
Yes,
and they may make another appearance. Anyway, who's your first one?
Well, my first one actually is a member of the royal family, but it's not Harry and Meghan.
Okay.
It's Prince Andrew. Look, I mean, there's all sorts of things you could say about him. I mean, his interest in pizzas and nightclubs is well documented.
Yes, his unusual habit of not sweating.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be very difficult. Presumably, they're going to have to do the ice bucket challenge on him this week because it's going to be a little bit hot. But anyway, he's been lobbying very hard, and it's been reported in the papers that he wants William and Charles to be overruled about he has no future public role.
Right.
And I just personally think that, I mean, do you know what Frankie Boyle said about him once? He said, I think we should keep him in public where we can keep an eye on him. It's what he did in private we're concerned about. So let's not leave him as a private person.
I mean, I think the arrogance of the man knows no bounds, does it? And I mean, he must absolutely hate the fact that he's now been told just to button it and stay where he is.
And the City of York voted. I mean, they don't have a vote on whether he remains as the Duke.
Yeah.
But that's got to be fairly crushing.
I think it has got to be. And has he not also been defenestrated by the regiment that he's meant to be in charge of?
Well, actually, the regiment, I forget which regiment it was, but what they were saying, it might be the Royal Marines, I can't remember. But what they said was, look, after his performance, it's denigrating to the people that gave their lives for this regiment.
Yeah.
And I think that's a reasonable comment,
so do
actually.
I. And I'm a massive royalist.
Yeah.
But I agree. He should keep quiet for his mother's sake.
Well, absolutely.
And for the sake of the monarchy going forward, he should just disappear.
She's got enough difficulties as it is handling all the stuff that she handles so well. And for him to just keep popping up every now and again, what about me, Mummy? I always get the impression that he's the guy that sort of sees her last in the evening and goes in and sort of knocks on the door and, Mummy, can I do this tomorrow? And she probably goes, oh, all right then. And then everybody else goes, no, it's not going to happen.
But the other thing is,
because mothers love their sons, don't they?
Regardless, we absolutely do.
I live in Windsor, so I know a little bit about kind of what goes on. And what they'd originally done was they'd given those two houses on the Windsor estate to to Edward and Andrew for them to retire and be replaced by William and Harry. Now, obviously, that's not the way it panned out, but the intention was always for Prince Andrew to play golf and drink himself to death.
Yeah.
I don't understand why he continually
Why won't you
believes
just do
it.
that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that involves going places, though. He used to always go places under the auspices of doing some kind of ridiculous trade deal.
Yes.
And he somehow always managed to find some time to play a round of golf.
Yeah.
You know, he'd go to Abu Dhabi, he'd go to Dubai, he'd go to Hong Kong, he'd go to all these places. And actually, people said, that I've met politicians who used to go on these trade missions, said he was actually quite good value as a sort of a trade ambassador, simply because he was in the royal family and loads of people wanted to meet him.
Yeah.
Therefore, they'd come to the do.
But a lot of this, I personally do not believe he's guilty of any crime, believe it or not. I will tell you what I think time and time again. You keep seeing like these trade missions where halfway through he just went to Azerbaijan on his own. A lot of this is to do with just being paid money, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just getting millions of pounds by all these dodgy dictators.
Well, Charles doesn't have to go anywhere. They all come to him.
Yeah,
you know, the Qataris gave him a bag of money. Then he got some from Osama bin Laden's family.
It's not a good look.
I mean, it's a ridiculous situation.
I had a friend who went on an all-party parliamentary group and he went into the bathroom and they said, "We've left your money in the bin." And he opened up and there was 50,000 quid. He said, "I can't have this."
God.
You know? And they said, I'm not going to name the names, but they said, "Well, the last Labour MP in this job, he took one every time."
I mean, the story was amazing, wasn't it, the Qatari one, where they were actually handing money to this guy in Fortnum and Mason's carrier bags. You kind of going, you couldn't really make this stuff up.
It's a different world,
but you know
isn't it?
something? If you think about it, like a CBE, it's all very prestigious and we'd all like one, but it is fundamentally a lump of tin worth 50 quid, right? The reality is, if you want to give a charity that Prince Charles likes £2 million in exchange for this lump of tin, knock yourself out. Do you know what? Keith Vaz, I thought he should have sold the Hindujas a passport. I'd stick the passports on eBay, right? $5 million a pop.
Well, listen, now you just have to bribe somebody to get a passport, period, even though you're actually entitled to one, because the passport office is useless. That's how bad it is.
But right now, you can get into this country as long as you can pay for a dinghy.
Yeah.
Right? So as far as I'm concerned, if the Hindujas want to give us $5 million for a passport, knock yourself out, baby.
Unbelievable.
Thanks very much.
Well, listen, I'm going to go for a place for my first plank of the week, and I'm going to go for Bradford. Because Bradford was named just in the past few days, probably just the end of last week, as the most dangerous city in Europe. In a new study. And we're talking about how dangerous London is. But they've measured this, right? The second most dangerous is apparently Coventry. They've basically measured this by some organisation called Expatriate Consultancy. And they've used numbers from the Numbio's Crime Index, which includes thefts, robberies and attacks. It found that the 2025 UK City of Culture is the most dangerous place in Europe. And it came incredibly high up compared to places like Marseille, places like Hamburg. And I mean, I don't know how accurate this figure is, but I mean, you'd have to be a pretty plankish city, wouldn't you, to not be able to do something the size of Bradford. It's not a massive city, is it, Bradford?
No, it's not.
But it was the city of culture. According to the data, Bradford's got 146 crimes per 1,000 people.
Yeah, but they only give...
Which is quite a lot, isn't it?
They only give City of Culture to places that need to shine up their reputation because they're a bit rubbish.
Yeah, absolutely. The study says for a few years, the city was a hotspot for rapes and sexual assaults, particularly in Keighley, a district of Bradford, that was also home to one of the many child grooming gangs operating in the UK at the time. So, I mean, finally, people are actually beginning to recognise that this crime was going on, because for so long, nobody talked about it. It was always like, oh, don't mention that.
No,
that's terrible.
right.
I'm so happy that they're now actually acknowledging
Did you see
that it's a problem.
Did you see that comedian who pretended to be a Labour MP and tweeted out, why are people complaining about this child grooming and rape? Don't they understand this undermines multicultural Britain? And the number of left-wing commentators who retweeted it, like as a genuine thing. I think Owen Jones did as well.
I know. Well, I mean, I don't know what Owen Jones tweets because he's blocked me. He's amongst many, many people who have been on this show, but he didn't block me for that. I can't remember why he blocked me. I think I asked him a question.
Because you're not gay, right? You're not gay.
Well,
you're not gay.
He can say that because he is. I can't say that because I'd be crucified. But there we are. Right, who's your second one?
My second one is the Lincoln Police.
Yes. God bless them.
Allowing their officers in uniform to actually stand there dancing with the crowds.
Yes.
And then 3 hours later, they had to issue a dispersal order because there were large fights in the town. I mean, it's ludicrous. We need respect back for our police. And in my view, getting them to dance around, and it's nothing to do with the Pride March. It's everything to do with their behaviour, whether it's at the Pride March, whether it's at Extinction Rebellion, where they dance around with them, whether it's on the BLM movements when they're on their knees. They shouldn't be doing any of that, in my view.
No.
They're not there to be liked. They're there to be respected, and you will not be respected, in my view, if you take part in all of these.
It's also remarkably lazy. In reality, what they want to do is tick the diversity box. And because the Gay Pride March really isn't a protest anymore, it has no particular political agenda and very little crime is associated with it. They just go, oh, let's paint up the cars. That's our diversity box ticked. And I just think, you know, at the end of the day, you know, you've got a whole gay community that are less interested in the Gay Pride March than the bloody police.
I know.
Yeah.
They're obsessed.
Also, I mean, I was saying this to Susan earlier. I mean, it doesn't strike me the Gay Pride March as a place where there's going to be a great outbreak of violence. I mean, I don't know what Lincoln's like. I've never been to Lincoln, actually.
I think...
But you know, for there to be mass fights and brawls breaking out in Lincoln, what's going on in Lincoln?
I don't know.
What's that all about? I mean, you know, suddenly, I mean, they haven't really, I mean, they've got a football team, but I don't think they're famous for having hooligan fans or anything like that. I mean, I live near Millwall, and there's quite often running battles around Surrey Quays Way between Millwall and whoever they're playing. Well, they quite like a bit of that.
I don't know if this will offend you, but normally, in my experience, in my experience of these Pride marches or whatever, it's normally the ladies that'll get into the violence.
Right.
The fellas are less interested.
It's true, actually. I was once in a gay nightclub, and the only fight I saw was between two women, which was quite terrifying.
They're not glory fights. They're properly.
They're properly. Yeah, no, I had to get out of the way. It's quite frightening. But yeah, but this whole kind of obsession with making sure that everybody's inclusive. It's like you're the police. You don't have to be inclusive. Just arrest the bad guys. Just do your job.
Well, that's right. And trust and confidence in the police is at an all-time low, certainly in London.
Yeah.
And they need to look at what they're doing, and certainly getting involved in all of these different events is not what they should be doing. They should be there.
But every organisation moves its focus. Like McDonald's now makes more money off rent than it does off burgers. The police are moving from what they used to do, which is fight crime, to what they do now, which is run diversity training days. And they're brilliant at diversity training days. If you want a diversity training day, get down to the New Scotland Yard.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Knock yourself out.
Well, we had a guy call us today who was telling us about his local town, which was somewhere in Yorkshire. He didn't want to give the name, but it was obviously a seaside town, slightly run down.
Yes.
A lot of drug dealers, a lot of drug takers, a lot of homeless people. And there was a row going on somewhere between a group of youths and another group. And he went to these police that he found who were hanging around by a sort of monument and asked them to go and intervene and stop whatever was happening, nuisance, shouting and all the rest of it. And they said they were only on a PR day and they couldn't actually, and they said, maybe you should call it into the station. And he's going, hang on a minute, you know, you're actually here. You can't go over there and talk to those people over there and stop them committing crimes. Oh, no, can't do that.
I've just remembered something. I was on Garrett Lane in Wandsworth, and there was a bloke who came out of one of the supermarkets with a knife, holding a knife, having threatened staff. Now, I'll tell you what, I actually froze. It was quite a terrifying thing, actually. And there was a police van just there, knocked on the window, and I went, "Oi, they've got a knife." We went, "Sorry, we're going somewhere else." I went, "Oh, you hell." Opened the door and dragged out.
Who's your next one?
Well, I've changed my mind because I was going to go for... I was going to mention the RAF, and we can do that, but also I want to go for a left field one, which is my old college, and it's because it's my old college, Royal Holloway in the University of London. Yeah. The reason is because I don't know anybody who's still engaging with John Bercow, and yet they continue to have him as a professor, despite all the pressure. He left the speaker's job, obviously been widely discredited, famous for being the worst speaker really in history, and I include Thick Mick in that, who was really Adan.
He was all right, Mick, wasn't he?
I remember
quite entertaining, I thought.
Yeah,
I thought no, Thick Mick and Jill Pay were hilarious when the police raided the Palace of Westminster and they said they were unaware of the convention that officers of the Crown can't violate the Palace of Westminster. Like, what do you think happened with Cromwell? Right, what do you think took place? And the Sergeant-at-Arms didn't know. But anyway, look, John Bercow, I think, was a genuine disgrace. He's one of those people who tries to cause an argument. When we were talking about the gay pride thing, his arguments about gay marriage, he tried to create an argument where none existed.
Yeah.
He was desperately trying to become Prime Minister. Do not believe for 1 second that he wasn't trying to put together a coalition to put himself into number 10 from the Speaker's chair.
Yeah.
And for Royal Holloway, a really lovely place out in Surrey, to continue to engage with this man is pure plankery.
Because very few other people will engage with him. I mean, you remember Sky hired him for the night, for election night 2019.
That's right.
And they paid him some ludicrous amount of money, like 60 grand for one night. And they got fewer than £1 per viewer, you know, because they didn't get 60,000 viewers. And I remember his face as well when the Tory majority came in. He was literally thought he was going to cry. You know, he was that upset. And they all were. They were all sort of, you know, looking, oh, my God.
There
they
were
couldn't
lots
quite
of people
believe
like
it.
that, let's face it.
Yeah.
I love
Living in London.
what David Cameron reputedly did to Bercow. After he'd massively bullied the chief clerk of the House of Commons, now Lord Lisvane, Cameron said, look, we'll put you in the House of Lords. You'll become one of the first clerks ever to be in the House of Lords. But I've got to make a deal. Get on the House of Lords membership committee and block Bercow for the rest of your life.
Yes.
And that is what Lisvane has done.
My
Right?
favourite story about Bercow is the one told by the guy who I think was one of Cameron's PPSs or something.
Yeah.
And they got into a little prang in the car park, and this guy was backing out, and he somehow managed to knock into Bercow's car. And
Yeah.
he famously had that sticker on it.
He did.
Which he said his wife had given him, which was, you know, B to Brexit or whatever it was. Anyway, apparently he bumped into his car. Bercow jumped out of his car, very angry, ran up to him and went, I'm not happy. And he went, well, which one are you then? Which I thought was just brilliant. Cameron told the story, I think.
My mate helped Sally Bercow build the Wendy house. And my mate said, I think John's a bit old for this now, isn't he?
Very
Actually,
good.
before he got married, he was all right. He was very good to me and my daughter. He took us to see the old Queen Mother in waiting in the Great Hall. And we went out for a drink with him afterwards. And he was perfectly normal. And then he met Sally.
But I think a lot of this was, you know, he latches on to people and then moves on. I mean, I saw him when I worked at the House of Commons and I was in Conservative Way Forward with him. And he saw me and went, hello, comrade, how are you? I thought, I'm not a comrade of yours. What are you talking about?
How very strange. Well, away from the world of politics, so you're nominating the University of Holloway rather than him.
No, Royal Holloway College.
Royal Holloway College, sorry.
University of London.
Oh, OK, got it. Load of old goop was the headline in The Sun this week, and I'm going to put Gwyneth Paltrow very firmly in the...
Please don't mention the candles or I'm leaving.
No, the candles are very bizarre. Nobody knows why she did that. I mean, they're also really expensive. You know, I don't know why you'd want a candle. You know what the candles we're talking about, don't you?
No, I don't. I was away last week.
Well, no, this is an older story, though.
I don't.
I think just try and say it tastefully, Mike.
Oh, maybe don't.
No. Let's
let
just say
people
she's
use
made
them.
some candles which have an aroma which is supposed to be very familiar, which is sort of more to do with a woman's...
it smells of her private parts.
Area. That's the general idea. Anyway, so her latest...
Elton John bought it.
But they're very expensive. Her latest... She's got this website called Goop, right, which is full of all sorts of advice, all sorts of ridiculousness that only a very wealthy woman who probably grew up in California, which she did, would tell you. But she's gone sort of full... madness on the old trans thing, right?
Yes.
Instead of calling men, she's now talking about partners with a prostate. And she's also talking about penis-bearing people. Right? Now, I don't even know what it means. I just don't know what penis-bearing is. I mean, if you're bearing a penis, does it mean you're wearing it? Are you carrying somebody else's? Is it out? I mean, I just don't know. Piers Morgan said, you know, as somebody who actually does bear a penis, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And I don't know why all these, you know, these celebrities
absolutely ludicrous.
have to show themselves to be woke so that they can be supported by people. I mean, I don't really understand what Gwyneth Paltrow's for. I mean, I quite liked her as an actress. I thought she was in Sliding Doors is one of the great movies, I think, you know. And I've always quite liked her. But, you know, it's just ridiculous. I mean, and I think she was too woke even for Chris Martin from Coldplay, you know, who dumped her because he couldn't stand it anymore.
Yeah, they're all trying to outwoke each other, and it's just so tiresome.
Tedious.
I'll tell you what I felt really offended by when I watched the Oscars and what had clearly happened, and I'm sorry to summarise this, but Harvey Weinstein had been enabled by the Hollywood glitterati and elite for years. They'd all known about his behaviour. None of them cared. None of them ever complained.
That's right.
And then he sold Miramax and was no longer in a position to help them. And then they all dumped on him, and probably rightly so. But and all that is what took place. But then my family, my brothers have to watch the Oscars, if they did, and be told that they're to blame for the rape culture. And you think that all the incidents that you are describing do not happen in my family, don't happen on my street. It was all you lot. And then you're lecturing me on how to resolve it.
Exactly right. Well, here's the sort of thing that people like her say. What we are saying collectively as a culture and as a society is we are done with that paradigm of patriarchy of white men. So... there's also a patriarchy, which you forgot to mention. Of white men.
Well, I'll tell you,
who
I
are
thought...
apparently in charge of everything. It doesn't feel like that, I must say.
I thought it... Isn't there those adverts that are going out now, which is something like, white men, check your power? I mean, it's just racist.
Yeah, it really is. It's
Well, the other thing is,
nonsensical.
It is, but we're not allowed to say that. I mean, and that's the irritation, isn't it?
Yeah, it
But,
really
you
is.
know, if you are a white working class kid at a crummy inner city school, the fact that Prince Charles is also white has no bearing on your life
that's right.
whatsoever.
And also, you never get your job at the BBC either.
No.
Because they call themselves very diverse at the BBC, but they're actually not, because they're all terribly middle class. You know, most of them have gone to private school.
Yes.
It doesn't actually matter what colour they are, because they're all of a similar class. And class, to me, is far more important than, you know, race is, because it's white, as you said.
It's amazing.
White working class kids and probably black working class kids who are worse off.
And white working class kids are supposed to have the worst achievements of all of them.
I'll tell you what, though, only the BBC could set up in Salford and still be posh. I mean, how on earth they've managed that?
I'm not sure
I mean,
how they've managed
that requires real talent.
Yeah, I've been to Salford. It's a bit like that sort of Salford Quays is a bit like Canary Wharf without any people.
But there's
nobody there.
The thing that's amazing about
never
it,
been.
and no disrespect, because I worked in Salford, I love the people of Salford, but, you know, aside from a very small area, there's basically no posh people in Salford at all. But somehow the
Apart from
BBC
Gary
have managed to find some.
Well, they
to
took them all up
populate.
there.
Yeah, that's
Because,
right,
you know,
they relocated them.
The whole
didn't they?
point of
And that's the
relocating
thing.
the BBC up to Salford was not to actually employ anybody from Salford.
Yeah, that's probably
It
right.
was to move all the people from London and go, look at how brilliant we are. We've told you all that we're going to bring our sort of, you know, it's like soft diplomacy to the north. Isn't it going to be amazing?
Yeah, that's right.
Can you imagine
It's like an embassy.
Can you imagine somebody? Yeah, it is.
It's like a woke embassy.
You know, what do we do now? You know, what's Boddington's?
Oh, what was that? What was that? Look, it's a guacamole dip.
Yeah.
No, it's mushy peas.
Mushy peas. Exactly right. That was Mandelson. They've actually quoted Keir Starmer in this piece as well, where he said, for the vast majority of women, biology is what matters, and it's very clear they don't have a penis. But there is a small minority of individuals who are born in a gender they don't now identify with.
Well,
Sorry?
the whole conversation is around this now.
Yeah.
It's ludicrous.
I know.
Absolutely ludicrous.
Absolutely
We've got
mad.
all these real problems in the world at the moment. We're looking at crime rates that are horrific. You know, we're looking at the cost of living. We've got all sorts of issues. And people are concerned as to somebody's gender and how to refer to them. And
I know.
And the Labour lot still don't seem to be able
The
to
Labour lot,
define
no, they can't agree on anything, can they?
they agree they don't know what a woman is.
Yes.
That's something they all seem to have in
Must be
common.
why they haven't got one as leader of the party.
And
Because they can't find one.
It's interesting. It's
well,
interesting
that's
that.
right, Angela Rayner.
It's interesting that, though. I don't know what your view on it is, but we're now getting to the stage, aren't we, where it's not just that the Conservatives are better at being diverse in terms of their leadership, but there must be something in it. It must be that positive discrimination is damaging to women and ethnic minorities. That can be the only possible explanation for the Conservative versus Labour position.
It is, because as a female, you want to be there on your own merit.
Yeah.
You don't want to be there because you've been shortlisted because you're a female.
Yes.
And to be fair, I was the first female leader of Harrow Council. I'm leader of the GLA. We may well have our third female Prime Minister from the Tories.
Yep.
In reality, we don't do what Labour does.
No.
And you
Maybe they're just good old-fashioned misogynists.
I mean, I think
including the women.
I think there's a huge element of that. I mean, if we were talking about the BBC, if you look at the BBC,
Well, you look at the trade unions still.
Oh,
I know
right.
they've got a couple of female leaders now, but all the picket lines that you see,
But
it's almost all exclusively men. There's hardly any women involved in it.
But what they do is basically these white middle class men in somewhere like the BBC or the Labour Party. What they do is they attempt to crush the men that are younger than them in order to shine up the fact that they're embarrassed about the lack of diversity.
Yeah.
The reality is the Conservative strategy has worked better than the Labour strategy. There is now no doubt about it, because we're talking about potentially a third female Prime Minister, but also second ethnic minority Prime Minister, both Conservatives.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
potentially. I mean, I don't think it'll happen, but...
Yeah, but, you know, there's also plenty of cabinet positions which have been filled
Absolutely.
in that way,
and
which
they've
is a
been
good
filled
thing.
very well by people that are able to do the job, not people that are there because either their ethnicity or their gender or anything else.
Hang on, I think we can also save the Conservatives. It's just crossed my mind. I think if they put in Kwasi Kwarteng, that will be the third non-white Chancellor and all Conservatives.
Yeah, I know. Extraordinary, isn't it? We weren't even doing the Labour Party there, but they seem to have joined the plankery list. Who's your third one, Susan?
Well, it could have been the RAF, but we've touched on bits of that. But actually, the Scottish Nationalists. While I was away, there was a hustings in Perth.
Right.
And as usual, the Scottish Nationalist protesters outside threw eggs at people going to it. They attacked journalists, they spat at a pensioner, and they tried to grab a young Tory woman, called her a Tory whore, told her she should die or she should kill herself.
Goodness me.
But, I mean, when I go to normal conference, there's always people out there spitting and calling you scum and things like that.
It's dreadful, isn't it?
I would never dream of doing that.
They're all feminists until the woman's a Conservative, aren't they?
That's right.
Oh, that's right.
Wrong
And then
kind of
they
woman.
become the most unbelievable misogynists.
Well, there is a
Absolutely.
strain of the not necessarily the SNP, but of Scottish nationalists, which is kind of fanatical.
Yes.
And they absolutely detest anything to do with England.
Yeah.
And they actually, you know, during COVID, for example, were hoping that Sturgeon would ban anybody from England coming, because that's what they want to do anyway.
Well, talking of bans, the Scottish National Party has said that in an independent Scotland, there would be no security services because Scotland would be a neutral country and they would have uncontrolled immigration. We would have to build a border and we'd have to end the common travel area. We would have to say that any Scot that came to England for anything more than a 3-month holiday would need a visa. Because otherwise, all that would happen is every Islamic fascist that wanted to attack London would fly to Scotland and get on the train. And we couldn't allow that to happen.
No, we absolutely couldn't.
It's a very strange mix of beliefs up there now, because, you know, they've suddenly had this resurgence, haven't they? Nicola Sturgeon suddenly decided that she wants to go for independence again. And nobody really knows why, because there's no evidence that the vote would be any different from the way it was last time. It will still go probably 46, 54, whatever it was. Nobody else actually wants independence than they did last time.
No, but Mike, she's got to concentrate on that. It's the same as SADIQ Khan concentrating on air quality, because everything else around her is absolutely dreadful. If she talks about the drug issue, that in Scotland is dreadful, crime is dreadful, education issues.
But she is not...
And a lot of businesses were absolutely destroyed by her reaction to COVID. The fact that they couldn't reopen.
So she'll talk about
there was what I called the auction of piety. What would happen is Andy Burnham would come on and go, what we need to do is shut the supermarkets as well as the schools. Nicola Sturgeon would go, I'd shut the supermarkets, the schools and the churches. And then Mark Drakeford. And it just became... And of course, all they wanted to do was just hand the bill to England. I swear that by the time that COVID thing was over, there was only like 4 people in Surrey paying for the bills for everybody. I find it extraordinary. But I think the Scottish National Party are not patriots and they're not nationalists. The reality is she wants to leave the United Kingdom because she sees the Westminster system as a blockage to bring in socialism. She wants an independent Scotland so she can better capitulate to the European Union and so she can run the country into the ground with socialist principles that were discredited when the Soviet Union fell.
And she's now in bed with the Greens, which is even worse, because they're even worse than the SNP up there. It's an absolute nightmare. Now, before I come to you for your third, we always carry one over because we have to have a top 10. So the 3 of us make it 9. So the 10th, I'm afraid, is going to have to be Harry and Meghan again. Because they're coming back.
A classic never dies.
I mean, first they told us that it was a racist country. Then they told us that it was a racist royal family. Then they said that they couldn't come here because it was too dangerous, right? Then they came here and nobody took much notice of them, so they went back early. And now they're coming back again. But this time, you have to pay £1,000 for the privilege of sitting in a room with them and listening to their drivel about why we all need to be kinder to one another. In the middle of a cost of living crisis, they're actually asking people to give them this money. Suppose it's for a charity, so I'm not saying they're keeping the money. But I mean, how out of touch with the world and reality can you be?
I think that is absolutely disgusting what you've just said. Harry Harry is an intellectual, lest we forget that he has a D in art and a B in art and a D in geography.
Yeah.
Right, that is a quality academic, right? Well worth £1,000. She, by the way, most people don't know what she did as a degree, but she did, listen to this, theatre studies with international relations.
There you go.
Never was anybody more qualified for what
she's worked out quite a good living for herself, though.
Oh, she has.
Oh,
by
she
marrying
knew what
a
she
prince.
was doing, yeah.
Yeah, extraordinary. Anyway, so don't miss it. They'll be in Manchester for about 3.5 nanoseconds, and then they're off to Germany to promote something that isn't happening until next year, and then they're off back to the US. I mean, you know, it beggars belief how these people live, doesn't it? There'll be a private jet involved, no doubt.
yeah.
They just crave attention.
I think so.
They fly around the world telling us that we need to conserve energy.
And their supporters say, oh, leave them alone. Why are you always picking on them? It's like, well, because they won't leave us alone.
Yeah,
I wish
that's
they'd
right.
leave us
That's
alone.
right.
Yeah.
Stop bothering us.
That's right. This is
You know, go away.
This is just. I mean, my favourite is when you open the newspaper and they go, "Meghan speaks out."
Yes.
I think she does it every day.
What else
Right.
does she do?
Oh, absolutely right. I mean, I said laughingly when they were still living, before they moved to Montecito, one of the most expensive parts of the world, never mind America, when they were living in Hollywood or near Hollywood, and they put this big fence up around the house. I said, that's to keep him in. It's not to keep the paparazzis out. She's worried he's going to do a runner.
I mean, I love the way that he keeps going on about how happy he is. I mean, if you've been married for only a couple of years and you're renewing your vows, that's to prove you like each other against all evidence.
Doesn't look good.
You look at his face and this is not
Doesn't
a man.
look happy.
No, he doesn't.
He really doesn't. He looked a lot happier when he was naked in a room with some strippers in Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's right. They were of a higher standard, those women,
Well,
weren't they?
who can say? Now, I couldn't possibly comment. Who's your third?
Well, it's going to be KEIR Starmer, and I'll tell you why,
Excellent.
because I've been doing the tour of various TV channels and radio stations, not including this one. This hasn't happened here. But what amazes me is when people sit there and piously talk about the cost of living crisis, the cost of energy, the second you suggest fracking or removing green levies or trying to produce cheaper energy, they virtually thump you.
Yeah.
KEIR Starmer is now talking about the solution to all this is to insulate.
Yes.
And you just think, for goodness sake.
Has he joined Insulate Britain? Is he going to glue himself to the M25?
I
I'd like to
wish.
see that. Yeah.
Or if he glues himself to the M25, let's hire a steamroller. Come on, KEIR.
I don't think you're allowed to incite violence of any kind.
No,
Obviously, he's only
absolutely not.
joking, obviously.
Yes, of course, I'm only joking.
Yeah.
No, look, you would never want to kill KEIR Starmer because he's the secret weapon for the
He is.
Conservatives.
Yes, he is.
He's absolutely
Although
terrible.
I was with Ken Livingstone this week, and he said, I mean, I think
He said Hitler.
a little bit.
Oh, too much.
I got him to say it because he hadn't said it yet until I asked him, and I said because you always mention it every time, you know. But he actually said that he believes that Keir Starmer will be the greatest Prime Minister since Clement Attlee. And I thought, well, you've changed your tune. I thought you used to support Jeremy Corbyn. And he went, yeah, well, he's a friend of mine, but he couldn't do it. And I was like, well, he didn't need friends like you, really, does he?
I thought the best thing was what Julia Hartley-Brewer said to Ken Livingstone in an interview. She went, Ken, can you get through a whole interview without mentioning Hitler?
Right.
And he goes, yes, I can, when Mr H led Germany.
Well, he said it last night, so he didn't
Well
get away
done,
with that.
Mike. Well
It's
done.
really funny, though, because you can see that I wouldn't say he loves Hitler, but he's clearly interested and fascinated
comes
by
up
what
all the
Hitler.
time,
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, Hitler's not a major part of my life. if I'm
No,
being totally-
you know, not really a major part of anybody's life. So this insulate thing that he came out with, he said, yeah, I want to have all houses insulated. Now, anybody with half a brain who knows anything about insulation knows that you can't insulate all the houses in
No.
Britain. Also, nobody really knows if you were going to do it, how much money it would cost and how long it would take. But it would take years, wouldn't it?
But
imagine,
course.
I mean, look how long it takes them to build a house.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to insulate every house in Britain. How's that going to work?
But we're brilliant. We're brilliant at rewarding failure, aren't we? I mean, I saw Andrew Bailey. There are serious questions about his ability at the Financial Conduct Authority to stop people getting ripped off. But apparently he was all right. He is earning $575,000 a year.
He's not sure exactly how much.
No, he's not sure exactly how much he's earning. I mean, a bit worrying for a banker. But anyway, but his job is to control inflation. And he's come on the TV to say, no, I can't control
No, he
inflation.
doesn't.
Pay
No.
me anyway. We are now in a position with water bosses who are being rewarded actually for having a brilliant business model. They have not hosepipe bans and not merely saying don't use our product.
Yeah.
They're making it a criminal offence to use their product whilst charging you.
know.
I personally think that all of these people are just being rewarded for failure.
Yeah, they are.
And the whole thing about insulating Britain is we are going to come up with these crazed green policies. We are going to push the cost up massively, and we're going to force you to resolve it by using less energy and paying more.
Yeah, it really is
crazy.
absolutely mad.
Absolutely.
Well, Keir Starmer's another welcome addition to what is always...
He's an old favourite.
He's always up there, again, in the top 10. Anthony Joshua, I don't think has ever been in it, but I'm going to put him in it this week because he fought in Saudi Arabia at the weekend against the Ukrainian Alexander Osuch, I think his name is, and he just went a bit mad, really, didn't he? I mean, he was under a lot of pressure. He said that he had to go to a very dark place to fight, but what he did, I think, was unforgivable. He said he was sorry and he shouldn't have done it, but he basically, I don't know if you saw the fight, at the end of the fight, he lost. He went over and grabbed the two belts
and threw them over the ring.
From his opponent's corner, chucked them away in a very kind of dismissive manner. These weren't even belts that he had before. You know, he hadn't lost them. And then he went and there was a bit of argy-bargy between him because they obviously had a go at him. He then walked off as if to leave the arena. Obviously thought better of it and somehow, you know, decided to come back. But then came back and launched into this bizarre rant, you know, about all sorts of stuff that he shouldn't really have said. And you might argue that, well, his people should have been more together and they should have stopped him from doing it. But, you know, I think the thing is when you're that wealthy, he's getting paid 55 million quid, right, for that actual experience. And I'm afraid if you are feeling a bit down in the dumps and you are feeling like you want to have a bit of a rant, just bite your lip, just don't do it.
Well, yeah,
you know,
but
there's
it's
no
out
reason
of
to
character.
do it.
It was out of character for him. He's they say he's an extremely nice person.
Yeah.
He completely flipped.
Yeah.
And I do blame the people that were supposed to be minding him. They really should have jumped on that straight away.
But also, you know, I'm not saying that Anthony Joshua's woke or anything like that, but it's amazing how all of these sports stars will talk about, you know, poverty, will talk about racism, will talk about discrimination, will talk about human rights, and then straight off to Saudi Arabia for 55 million.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You know, there's total hypocrisy there. I mean, Lewis Hamilton...
Look at all these people talking about, you know, kicking racism out of football. They're all off to Qatar for the World Cup.
Absolutely. Lewis Hamilton wears a Mercedes badge and talks about the issue of slavery.
Yeah.
And you think, literally, Mercedes as a company, now it's not the responsibility of the people who are currently there, was built on Jewish slavery in the Second World War. Now, that is a company that existed. You want me to compensate somebody from Jamaica for something my great-great-great-great-grandfather didn't do, and you work for Mercedes.
Yeah. He also goes to Bahrain and all these other places.
Absolutely.
Where you can find slaves today if you want.
Absolutely.
Well, and we should be worrying about the slaves, the slavery that's happening now.
Yeah. Right now.
Not donkey's years. I mean, just for how many years are we all going to be saying sorry for it? Because it was appalling, but just how long are we...
Yeah, but
how
there's
long
actual
is this going to
slaves
go
now, not more than 2 miles from here, you know, in hotels in Mayfair, living there because they're actually being kept by people who are very wealthy and who have been forced.
Right. And that's what
lest we forget, and we've talked about the Labour Party and Keir Starmer, lest we forget that it was the policy of the Labour Party to do absolutely no checks on Romanian immigrants, many of whom were incredibly nice, but some of whom exploited other fellow Romanians, principally from the Roma community, who work as slaves literally right now. They estimate 250,000, potentially as many as 250,000 people in some sort of slavery in this country.
Yeah, they don't want to know about that, though. They absolutely don't want to know about it.
They just want to rake up the past.
Yeah.
And just for
and
how
I mean,
long?
I'm not going to have a go at Anthony Joshua for being a hypocrite for going to Saudi Arabia, but I just think that, you know, when you are that wealthy, when you are a sports figure that a lot of people look up to, you have to have a particular, I think, a code of conduct where,
I do
you know,
agree.
you don't just behave as if you're just anybody and nobody's watching. You know, the eyes of the world are on you. You've got cameras all over the place and you're acting like a complete and utter idiot.
But can you imagine, as an example, Donald Trump had called Piers Morgan to the American embassy and had him chopped up and then incinerated.
Yeah.
That is what happened. Yeah. That is what happened in Saudi Arabia. And yet, you know, Donald Trump is evil. You know, Theresa May's evil.
Yeah.
Boris Johnson's
MBS
evil.
Is all right.
Oh, he's all right. Oh, get over there.
Joe
It's fantastic.
Joe Biden's shaking his hand.
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
the other week. You know,
absolutely. The hand came off.
Yeah. Well, he was lucky if you remember it actually, but that's another thing. So now we've reached that point where we've now nominated 3 each. So now we have to try and reduce it down to 1. So. Andre, why don't you pick your favourite one out of Susan's?
Well, you know which one I'm going to pick, right? Because I have to say, I think that what you do in terms of defending London against Sadiq Khan is fantastic. So I'm not only picking Sadiq Khan, but I hope Sadiq Khan wins this week in your honour.
Well, there you go.
Well, isn't that lovely?
Well, there you
we
are.
can finish the
So
programme now.
I can put a little red mark by SADIQ Khan in that case, because that's what we do. And then you should choose mine, I suppose. My three are Anthony Joshua, Gwyneth Paltrow and Bradford.
I think I'll go for Gwyneth Paltrow because I'm sick to death of the nonsense that comes out of the mouths of some of these people.
I think that's right. And so I should choose yours, shouldn't I? Now, you've changed yours, so I've had to change it.
So I've swapped. I was going to talk about the RAF, but to be honest with you, I think they've been done over by the former head of recruitment, so I'm not overly worried.
Well, also, isn't it funny, the RAF story, first of all, when it broke, it was an anonymous person that had left the recruitment business.
Now it's all out.
And now the woman, and then they denied it and said, oh, nobody's left, it's absolute rubbish. And then the woman came out and said, no, it was me, and I have left.
But if there was a principled person of the week, she would win it.
Yes.
Because she's basically
We
said,
don't do that, Sharon.
I'm concerned about the operational ability of the RAF being undermined by wokery. And not only am I going to stop it, I'm going to walk out and go public, destroy my career. And remember, when somebody does a patriotic act like that, there will be no job in the trade union.
No.
There will be no big TV tours. There will be no £1 million contracts or anything like that. She will really struggle now as a result.
Good for her.
Well, listen, and your three, Prince Andrew.
Prince Andrew, Keir Starmer.
He's been in it quite a lot, you might not be surprised to know.
Keir Starmer, and Royal Holloway for Burko.
Also a regular. I quite like Royal Holloway just because it's different.
Yes.
And Burko is a name I'd completely forgotten about until you brought it back up.
That's right.
Because I remember seeing him. He was here doing a couple of things at one point when he was trying to figure out what he was going to do with the rest of his life. Yeah, he came and did a couple of pilots here. And he used to wear this Arsenal cap, and it was always rather incongruous that he was a sort of football fan, because it didn't really fit with his image.
No,
but he was always telling everybody what a great big Arsenal fan he was. And then do you remember the whole business of the bullying claims?
Yes.
Which he completely dismissed and said it was all rubbish, absolutely outrageous that anybody should suggest for a moment that he had bullied anyone. And then he was found to have been one of the worst bullies that anybody's ever seen in the Houses of Parliament. And given that you worked there, you'll know that that's quite a big title.
Oh yeah, that's really. I mean, the reality is that he sets out to cause division.
Yes.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, I mean, I gave the example of the gay marriage thing earlier. There was pretty much widespread acceptance that there was no issue about gay rights, and then Burko managed to create an argument out of it. The beta Brexit sticker, he deliberately put it in the ministerial car park where everybody would see it in order to cause an argument.
Right. And also, we forget how difficult he was for everybody in the Parliament at that time when they were trying to push things through, when they were trying to get some legislation enacted, and he just blocked everything.
Well, it was all about him, wasn't it? Order.
Yes, he loved it.
He did. He really did. He got more and more.
But he's not getting in the House of Lords, not while Lord Lisbane's there.
No, absolutely right. And so...
so you're going for Royal Holloway, are you? In honour of Burko?
In honour of Burko, yeah, because it's just a sort of a sideways glance at him, isn't it?
Yes.
So we've got SADIQ Khan, Royal Holloway and Gwyneth Paltrow.
Well, I would like in the my order would be SADIQ Khan, Royal Holloway, because Burko's so bad that even by extension that makes it, and Paltrow third. That's what I'd have gone for.
Yeah, I think Paltrow's not as important, really, is she? She's just it's just a dopey Hollywood story.
If SADIQ Khan is up at the top, I'm a happy bunny because the man is just dreadful for
And you've got to be quite happy with the Burko involvement as well. That's going to be good.
Yes. And Gwyneth Paltrow, I mean, I don't think she's ever been in it before, which is quite surprising given that she is...
Given the candle incident.
And also just incredibly woke and just ludicrous about almost everything.
I mean, look, I don't want to go on about the candle thing, and I don't want to offend the taste and decency, but what was the thought process?
Yeah.
Well, there isn't one, and that's the thing.
But
the trouble is there's so many of these people that are so woke now. And it is getting in the way of getting things done.
Without a doubt.
It takes over conversation.
And of course, in the case of Stop and Search, is actively leading to the deaths of young people in London.
No.
Yeah. Well, do you know the other thing that I was reminded of by Lawrence Fox, who was talking to him the other day, about his new movie that's coming out where he plays Hunter Biden.
Oh, I saw you interview him.
Which is going to be quite funny, I think. Breitbart, I think, are behind putting it out there. There's a cinema chain in America which is about to go under. Now, obviously, it will be related in some way to the lockdowns and people not being able to go to the cinema. But he was saying a lot of it is to do with people rejecting these kind of woke scripts.
Yes.
Because everything now... is you've got a Black Anne Boleyn, or you've got some other show which is all about pursuing some kind of identity gender issue, and it's all about a message, and people are
Yes.
just
We're
going,
bored with
can
it.
you just not make a
Bored,
good film?
senseless. Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
And Tom Cruise, his new film is going really well because I don't think that's got any of that in it.
Yeah,
it's just about flying around in a plane very fast.
What I like about Tom Cruise is he understands what it's all about. He makes sure he looks good. He jumps on things and blows stuff up.
Yeah.
And that's it,
Yeah,
right? You know,
and that's why you go. And that's why you go to the cinema.
That makes a good
and they've
film.
got some great flying
My
scenes
favourite
and
one
all
is
that.
Richard Curtis. It's just the same film every time,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
it? And I fall for it every time.
Yeah.
Get Hugh Grant and he can be a foppish. What's that? We'll get that bloke with the eyebrow. What's his name? Bill Nye.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get him in. And Sandra
It is. It's
Bullock,
always the
she's in
same
everything.
cast,
It's
isn't
the same thing.
And it's brilliant. But that's exactly what people want. Right, so we'll go Gwyneth Paltrow third, Royal Holloway College second.
Yes.
It's not actually in Holloway, is it? Royal
No,
Holloway
no,
College.
it's named after Jane Holloway.
Oh, is it?
Who was the wife of
I
Tom.
always wondered about that.
Yeah, Thomas Holloway originally was a guy who sold medicine in the Victorian era. It's now been analysed.
Oh, okay.
And it's no more than
Well,
really
surely
bits
the
and
name
bits.
will have to be changed if he's a Victorian. I mean, also has some connection to slavery. So, I mean, that's bound to go.
That's probably
go
right.
for a
They're probably
burn,
going to
isn't
try and demolish his statue, aren't they? No, actually, I've got to be honest with you. Aside from Burko, it was the little bit of the University of London because it's in Surrey, which was fairly right wing.
Yes. Oh, okay. Well, that's about the only bit. It's not
Yeah,
like
that's
that,
right.
the LSE.
Jolly good.
And I'm delighted to say, on the first appearance of Susan Hall, she's managed to kibosh SADIQ Khan, and she's made him, and we've agreed, a Plank of the Week. So congratulations, SADIQ. It's the first time you've actually won anything for a while, apart from the election, obviously. SADIQ Khan, Plank of the Week. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Andre.
Thank you.
We'll see you guys next time.